Hello, I'm Mel from Mint Button School of Sewing, and I'm here today to tell you how to make an Abby cot liner. So the first thing that you're going to need is some cotton fabric. It needs to be 100% cotton, and the best type to use is calico, which is what we have got here. This is 1.12 m wide, which is absolutely perfect for your cot liner. It needs to be an off-white colour as well, so either white or cream is absolutely fine. You'll also need some basic sewing kit. You'll definitely need a pair of scissors. You'll definitely need a tape measure and a ruler. You'll also need some cotton. I've got some sort of beige cotton here, but anything that tones in with your fabric is perfect. You'll need some pins, and if you have them available, a rotary cutting ruler and rotary cutter and a mat like the one that I've got here on my table would make cutting really easy. First of all, you'll need to cut out your pieces. We're going to cut 3 pieces. One of them is a rectangle, and it's going to be the width of your fabric, which is probably 112 centimeters wide, and we need it to be 70 centimeters across. And then that's the line that we're going to cut across. So this is our first piece, and that's the biggest piece. And then we can be a bit sneaky and cut the next pieces at the same time across 2 layers of the fabric. So we need 2 squares, which are 45 centimeters. And this fabric is folded up at the moment, as you can see. That's how it comes off the bolt. So if I cut at the same time through both layers, then I'll end up with the 2 squares that I need. So it's 45 centimeters. Again, draw that line. Okay, so that's not quite the right shape yet. So I'm going to turn the piece around, and then I need a 45 centimeter square across that way. Let's draw 2 lines. I'm going to draw one here to get rid of the selvage of the fabric, so we don't really want to include that if we don't have to. And that is it. Those are the 3 pieces that you need. So the next step is to press your pieces to hem all 4 of the edges of all 3 of the pieces that we've cut out. This is really easy because the hem is the same on all of the pieces. So using a nice hot iron, first of all you're going to turn the edge of the fabric over by 2.5 centimeters. So I'm using this little seam gauge here, which has got a 2.5 centimeter edge to it. You don't have to use one of those. You can use any normal ruler or a tape measure, or if you're going to be making a lot of these, you could make yourself a little cardboard template with a 2.5 centimeter edge to it. That would make things a bit quicker. So you press all along one side at 2.5 centimeters, and this is the first turn of your hem. I'm using a nice hot steamy iron, but calico is really nice to work with and it presses really well. And then the next step is to do the second turn of the hem. So this raw edge here is going to get tucked under to meet the fold that we've just pressed, so that all of that raw edge is hidden. And then you're going to press it again. So keep turning as you go to get that all nice and tidy. And then to keep that in place, the next thing to do is to pin. So just pin along that hem to keep that nice and secure. So we want to do this hem on all 4 sides of all 3 pieces, but you'll need to do the 2 opposite sides of each piece first. So I've pressed that side, now I'm going to press this side. I will pin and press the other pieces so that they're all ready to sew in one batch, and then we'll come back and we'll do the other 2 sides. Once you have stitched the two opposite sides of your pieces, and this is all three of your pieces, I'm just showing you one of the smaller pieces, then you're ready to come back and hem and stitch the other two sides. So once these two opposite edges have been hemmed, we're now ready to turn this one in as well, and you're doing it in exactly the same way. So your 2.5 centimetre hem, pressing that in for the first turn, the nice hot iron, and then exactly the same again, turning the raw edge under to meet the fold, ready to stitch. So once this piece is stitched, then we will have 3 pieces that have all 4 sides hemmed, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to put everything together. So when you're stitching the hems of your pieces, you'll need to make sure that you use a normal stitch length on your machine. It will probably have a default setting, so you're looking for around 2 to 2.5 millimeters of your stitch length. And you'll want to use a nice cotton thread, or I suppose you could use polyester. When you start and stop sewing, you'll need to make sure that you back stitch. That means that your threads will be more secure and your ABIGAIL liner will just be nice and sturdy. So when it's being washed, it's likely to last a lot longer. So I normally hold on to my thread so we don't get any tangles, do a couple of stitches forward and then a couple of stitches backwards, and that will secure your thread. And then when you're stitching, you're doing what's called an edge stitch. So my line of stitching is just next to, or sort of a millimetre away from the fold that we've just pressed. And then as you sew, you can remove the pins. Try and keep that line nice and straight on the fold. And then when you get to the end, the same as at the beginning, you'll want to do a back stitch. So I stitch right to the edge of the fabric. And then I'll back stitch 2 or 3 stitches. And that just secures the thread. Make sure when you finish sewing that you trim the threads really close to the fabric, and that just keeps everything nice and tidy. And you'll be doing exactly the same thing on all 4 sides of all 3 pieces. So the next thing that we need to do is to mark the center points of some of our pieces. So for my biggest piece, piece 1, which is the 112 centimeter by 70 centimeter piece, I'm going to find the halfway points of the long sides by folding this in half. So I'm folding it right sides together. So you can use a pencil. I'm using a friction pen because it can be pressed away. So I'll just unfold that and make sure I can see my marks. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the smaller pieces, but we only need to mark the halfway point on one of the edges. So again, it's going to be on the right side of the fabric. So fold your nice neat hems together. Mark the halfway point just on one edge. And then do the same on the third piece. So now we're ready to construct our ABIGAIL liner. I've got piece 1, which is the largest piece, with the right side facing up, so the neat edge of the hem is up facing me. And I'm now going to line up the 2 smaller pieces either side using the halfway points that we've just marked. So with the right side facing down, matching up that center point, I'm going to line up those 2 seams that we've sewn. And then pin the center point, pin the edges, so that that's ready to attach together. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the opposite side with my other 45 centimetre square. So find the halfway point that we made, line that up on the other finished hem, and then pin that together, ready to sew. So when you're sewing these two pieces together, you're just going to stitch just next to the hem that you have folded, so you're not sewing through all of those bulky layers. So if you sew just next to that line to secure those two pieces together, and again you're going to back stitch at either end to make it nice and secure. And I'm sewing just next to the two hems that I've created, because then I'm not going through all the bulk of those folded edges. Try not to hit the pins. It doesn't matter if you go onto the fold, but it's just much easier if you don't, because it's not as bulky. And then when you get to the end, don't forget to back stitch and trim off those threads nice and close so that your liner is nice and tidy at the end and the beginning of your stitching. And then you're ready to stitch the opposite side. So the final stage of assembling your ABIGAIL liner is to make the boxed corners. So I need to do some measuring, and for that I've got my big piece right side up. I'm just going to unfold the piece I've just attached to it so that that's nice and flat. So I need to make a mark on this piece and this piece because they're going to be brought together, and that mark needs to be 19 centimetres along from where the pieces join. So I'll just mark that there. And then again on this piece, the smaller piece, again 19 centimetres from where the pieces have joined there. And I need to do that on each of the corners. So I've got 4 corners, so I've got 8 marks to make. And they're all the same measurement, 19 centimetres. Once you've made those marks, we're then joining these pieces together. This bit is a bit fiddly, so I need to bring the 2 19 centimetre marks I've just made together so that they line up. And then I need to pin this so that, just like I did with the piece before, I can join these together just inside the hem that I've made, and that's what forms the boxed shape of the ABIGAIL liner. So I'll just pin those together. It's a bit hard to see at this point what exactly is happening, but as long as you've got those 2 lines marked up, you'll be fine. I normally pin them all and sew them all at once, but if you're a bit confused about what's going on, pin the first one and stitch it, and then it will make sense. So that's one side done, so you can see a bit better now the boxed shape that that's going to make. And then I need to do that with the other 2 corners on the opposite side. So this step is a little bit tricky, but what we need to do, and I'll draw it with the pen so that you can see, we need to stitch across the 2 hems that we made at the 19 centimetre point that we marked, and then we're going to pivot and then stitch down as we did before against the 2 hems until we reach the bottom of this corner. When you get into the corner, it's a little bit bulky, but just try and make sure that you're only stitching through those 2 layers. So we're going to start here, go across the hem, pivot, and then stitch down towards the bottom. This bit can be a bit fiddly as well when you're starting off, because you're sewing through, I think you've got 6 layers there, so it can be quite bulky. Your machine might not particularly be enthusiastic about this bit. So do a couple of stitches forwards, a couple of stitches back, and then stitch until you come off the hem that you folded. And then once I'm just then sewing through just the 2 layers of fabric, keeping the needle down in your machine, lift the presser foot, turn your work, and then lower the presser foot again so that you're ready to stitch alongside the hems. So there's quite a lot of fabric going on when you get to the bottom of this seam, but as I said, just try and make sure that you're just stitching through those 2 layers. Just move anything else that's in the way out of the way. Get as close as you can into the corner. You might not be able to get all the way in. And once you've gone as far as you can, don't forget to back stitch. So that's what creates the boxed corner, like that. And then you just have 3 more of those to go. This side is a bit awkward because I'm now going to turn my work and it's all going to be on the wrong side of the sewing machine. But it's easier to approach from the points that you marked into the corner rather than trying to start at the corner and go back up to the top. So even though this is a bit of a silly way of doing it, it does make the most sense to me. So get as close into that corner as you can. Give those stitches a trim. So this is what your finished Abicot liner will look like. Hopefully the tutorial today has helped you to make one of these. They are quite quick and quite straightforward to sew, and I'm sure once you've made one, you could whip out another few quite easily. So any sewing assistance that you could give would be very much appreciated by Abigail's Footsteps, and thank you for watching today.